What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show, and I hope you're ready for another great conversation about profitability in the trades. This was a great one, so let's get it, y'all. What's up, trade crew? Welcome back to HVAC R&D, the voice of contractors, distributors, manufacturers, and everyone working to move the skilled trades forward. Around here, we believe the best conversations don't just make us better tradespeople, they make us better leaders, better teammates, better business owners, and better people. And that's what HVAC R&D is all about. Before we jump in, make sure you're subscribed to the HVAC R&D podcast and the Ramblin' Rhino newsletter on Substack so that you never miss a new podcast episode, article drop, or industry insight. While you're there, check out the HVAC R&D Resource Hub, packed with trusted tools, products, and resources for both your business and your life outside of the trades. A huge thank you to our partners Diversitech and LiveSwitch, and welcome to FieldMind for helping make these conversations possible. If your company is looking to connect with thousands of engaged tradespeople and industry leaders across contracting, distribution, and manufacturing every month, HVAC R&D offers strategic sponsorships and custom partnerships across our growing media network, including the podcast, Ramblin' Rhino newsletter, Resource Hub, website, and all of social media. Visit hvacrd.com, fill out the contact form, or reach out through any of our social media channels to learn how HVAC R&D can help put your brand in front of the trade crew. Now turn up the volume and let's get into another great conversation right here on HVAC R&D. So what's up, trade crew? Welcome back to the HVAC R&D podcast. We're going for fourth time's the charm because we've had some fun technical difficulties. I can't even say the word anymore. But tonight we are joined by Ben Hansen, known as the Profit Doctor. He is a profitability specialist who helps business owners stop the financial bleeding and actually make money from the companies that they've founded and built. From building an 8-figure staffing firm to advising $2 million to $50 million revenue-sized businesses, Ben focuses on one core truth: growth without profit leads to frustration, not freedom. Ben, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking some time with us today, and I'm really excited for our next and latest attempt to make this happen together.
Hey, Rhino, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to it, and I just love working with trades and construction type companies.
No, they are truly the salt of the earth people that keep everything going. And before you got to that place in your career, you had a very long and different journey through a completely different side of the world of business, much more of the white collar side than the blue collar side. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into eventually advising your blue collar people?
Yeah. Well, my background was definitely pretty white collar style, Ivy League undergrad, and then professional sales, and then business school, and then tech firms and Dell, and then Microsoft. And then I left Microsoft to start my own consulting and staffing company that sold marketing and marketing analytics services back to Microsoft. But while I was building that company up, we went to 100 employees and about 13 million in revenue over about 8 years. I was in this group called Entrepreneurs Organization. And so I had just conversations with hundreds of other business owners. And what I started to realize is that not everybody was wired like I was. And I have always been wired kind of keep the end in mind. And for me, the end of business is profitability and profit and cash flow and compensation, if you will, for the company owners and senior managers. What I found out is that maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of business owners, and maybe even more so in construction and trades, wired a little bit differently. Usually wired towards make sure the customer is getting great value and is satisfied, make sure your team is really taken care of and that you're doing good work. And often I find, 1/3 to a half of those business owners, the person who's on the short end of the stick is themselves. And so when I exited from Mactus Group, I started thinking, where could I really make a contribution and a difference in the world? And some of my EO buddies started asking me for help. Hey, could you help us tune up a few things? And that's kind of what got me into this business. We call it Profit Doctor. And basically, I help CEOs of mid-sized companies keep more of the money that their business is, quote, making.
What's one thing right off the bat? Because, we kind of, since we've done this a couple of times, there's some questions that we kind of all got answered in one a little bit. So, obviously, Profit Doctor as a name is extremely strong. And at what point, really, in all those conversations, did it just click? And what was it that made it click for you to see that these guys had businesses that were really sick financially, unfortunately sick financially, but what was the trigger that lets you start to see that as being a
Yeah.
major problem?
One of my early clients, $100 million construction services company. So they're one of the trades when you're putting up a high rise or a mid rise apartment complex. And they were doing, like I said, about 100 million in revenue. And their goal was, what can we do to get to 120 million? But what I realized is while they were doing 100 million in top line, their net profit at the end of the year was only at 3% or $3 million out of 100, which is very, very poor. And generally speaking, bottom like 25% of performance in that space. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe they would be better off, running and gunning to get to 6% net profit. Would be probably a lot more productive than running and gunning to try to get to another 20 million in revenue. And so it kind of clicked for me that so many business owners have this kind of sickness where they're just laser focused on sales, revenue, growth, and maybe have kind of lost sight of profitability, making money for themselves, and maybe financial health within the business.
And using your terminology, you really consider it what you call profititis. It's extremely common in the trades. And do you think maybe some of it's, a lot of us that are in the trades, when we go and we start a business because we were a great technician or we're great at doing the job. And
Yep.
we're like, well, I'm so good at this, I should just go do it for myself.
Yep.
Um, and, do you believe that's why a lot of contractors really believe that more sales will fix the problem as opposed to understanding what their real problem is?
I think in business, it's the big lie. The big lie is that more revenue fixes everything. And I'm certainly not one to be like anti growth. I'm a big fan of growth. I'm a big fan of customer acquisition and sales and generating more revenue and pipeline and that sort of thing. But ask yourself, let's pretend that you're a $5 million a year HVAC or HVAC company, right? And your profitability stinks today. But 3 years ago, when you were at 2 million, the company was a lot more profitable. What makes you think that getting another million in revenue or 2 million in revenue is going to make things better when things were actually better from a profit point of view when you were smaller, right?
Because they may not really know the characteristics of what actually makes them profitable. You
Yeah.
know, from the distribution perspective, the amount of times in my professional sales career, I've even heard, leadership on the distribution side say, well, sales cures all.
Yeah.
No, no, it doesn't always.
Yeah. I mean, what I find is that when every additional thing that you sell brings in a lot of contribution margin to the business, then more sales generally is super valuable. But if when you sell something, it's actually costing your company money, selling more of them is not going to help. And I hate to say it, but we do see a fair number of customers who kind of the phrase is they're taping $100 bills to the orders that they're shipping out. And essentially they're losing money with each incremental sale. And so we need to be very clear that people have a good understanding, not just of the revenue dynamics, but how that translates into contribution margin and profitability.
Well, and let's talk about, those different little key things that you're seeing. So
Mhm.
when you open up the books with ABC heating and cooling,
Yep.
what are you using to identify that even though they're growing, they're less profitable? Like, what are the first things you would start to point to and say, hey, Mr. Contractor, look at, last year versus this year in this category, you may be up here, but here's why you're down here. What's the first
Yeah.
thing you look at?
Yeah. Well, there's two things there. I mean, even before you look at quote the books, if when I ask my clients or my prospective clients, what are you doing to improve profitability, or how much time do you spend in a dedicated fashion focusing on profitability, I often find that people just aren't. They're so busy chasing revenue, they're fighting fires, they're dealing with maybe internal process and logistics issues, that they're just, there's only so much headspace to go around, and they're chasing these problems. And one of the problems that's not on their top 3 list is how to improve profitability. And I kind of look at that, yin and yang style. The negative is, man, that's a big problem. The opportunity side of that is that opens the door to making me think, if you haven't been focusing on profitability, it's likely there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that with, because some kind of simple changes, you could often add a lot to your bottom line. So that's like the first thing. We sometimes call it profit psychology, or mindset, or winning CEO mindset. I call it like thinking profit now. A lot of people have this idea, times are tough, I'm getting beat up in terms of my finances, and I'm not taking a lot of money home, or I'm dipping into savings to fund payroll and stuff like that. But I'm going to get paid at the end somehow, some mythical end point. And we try to, shake people a little bit, and like, that's not going to work. You should be getting paid now. And generally, any HVAC business is going to be valued as a multiple of its profitability. And so if your profit stinks, your value is going to stink. The flip side of that is, if we can, tune up your profitability, not only do you make a lot more money now, but in some future endpoint, like maybe you want to sell it, your business is going to be worth so much more.
Well, when you start these conversations with let's say a new prospective client, what's the first financial reality check that
Yeah.
every business owner really has to face when you
Yeah.
meet with them?
Well, I didn't mean to dodge your question the first time, so I'm glad you
No,
brought
you're fine.
back to it, and sort of more of a like tactical, like, bust open the books. What are you going to look for? The first thing is, as a CEO, what is your comfort and confidence in actually looking at your books? I see a lot of people, frankly, including that CEO of that $100 million construction services company I was talking about, that don't feel very confident looking at those numbers. And that is sometimes a combination of what they're being presented is not really terrific, and then their own like skill, comfort, and confidence is not very high. So, a key lever is, do you actually have something useful to look at? And do you have like the skills and confidence to look at it effectively? Like, that's kind of a big underpinning of all this. But assuming there's something worth looking at, and the people looking at it know what they're looking at or what they're looking for, we want to look at, for example, over the last 5 years, what was your net profitability? What was your materials cost as a percentage of that revenue? What was your gross profit or contribution margin? And maybe even if you were to bubble it up, as a business owner, do you have a crisp understanding of your profitability by, let's say, product or service line, and by customer type? So let's make it up. Let's say, you do service and you do new install, but you don't know if one is profitable, or you don't know how profitable service is or how profitable install is, and you've never really separated those two to look at them distinctly, not just from revenue, but from profit or contribution margin. Or let's say you had 2 locations, Charlotte and Chapel Hill. I'm just making up C's. Do you have a sense of which one is doing which? In many cases, the people who are below average profitability, part of why they're below average profitability is they're not looking at some of these big moving parts of their company with a profitability lens. Maybe they're looking at it from a revenue point of view, but not a profit.
You talk about splitting service and new install, and I think it has to go even a little bit further than that, because you've got we have essentially two different types of new install. We've got actual residential new construction, or we have add-on replacement. And your service and add-on replacement will almost 100% of the time be more profitable than new construction, unless you're in one of those segments where you do nothing but custom work with certain custom builders and you charge just like you would in an AOR company, and you make, you maximize your profit there because of the services you're providing to that builder and that homeowner. You're not building for a quick turnkey, you're building for a certain level of profit and comfort all the way around. So I think also what plays into that is, like we said earlier, there's a lot of these companies that they get started by people that just thought they would do it better if they did it themselves, but they didn't have the business background to look at the numbers and understand it. And that leads to a lot of places where they're uncomfortable looking at it and they just assume, well, if we just make more sales, we're fine. So they don't know how to bust open the books, and they're afraid to bust open the books. Everyone, if you've been waiting for Hillmore to jump into the premium digital manifold game, that wait is over. Introducing the brand new HDM1 digital manifold from Hillmore Tools, built for today's HVACR technician and fully compatible with A2L refrigerants. The HDM1 comes loaded with 88 refrigerant profiles covering everything from traditional A1 refrigerants to A2L, A3, and more. And thanks to its onboard processor, you're getting real-time calculations for superheat, subcooling, saturation temperatures, line temperatures, and system pressures, all right on a large, easy-to-read LCD screen. But what I appreciate most about Hillmore is that they never forget who they're building their tools for. You've got oversized rubberized knobs for dirty or wet conditions, rugged construction built for the realities of the field, and included K-style temperature clamps so you're ready to go right out of the box. Bottom line, more information, more accuracy, and more confidence on every service call. Ask your local distributor about the new HDM1 digital manifold from Hillmore Tools, available through Diversitech. Hillmore, tools designed for the way techs really work. Because confidence doesn't come from guessing, it comes from having the right information and the right tools to get the job done.
Yeah. Just to dig into what you said a little bit more, I would absolutely invite pretty
Trade
much
crew,
every
I'd like to
business
introduce
owner,
you to
if
my
not,
friends over at LiveSwitch.
If
you haven't heard of them, they're developing a
business
platform
owner,
specifically for
that you
trades
want
contractors and service
your
professionals like
revenue line
yourselves.
to be
So picture this.
broken down
Mrs.
into
Jones calls the
probably
office.
at least,
The furnace is making some kind of
3 to
strange
7,
sound.
maybe
Normally,
5 to
you would
10
just have to
different
roll the
line
truck and
items.
go see what's going on.
And if
But
you're
instead, with
really
LiveSwitch,
cooking
you can
with
jump
gas,
on a video
you
call
would
right
want
then and
each
there
line
with
item,
no app
let's just
with
say,
Mrs. Jones. You
new
can see things from her
residential
perspective
install.
on a fully
You would
functional
want
video
those
call. You can take
to, have
screenshots,
all
you can
the
record,
associated variable
and you can
costs
deliver
with them,
a different
so you get a
experience that no
contribution
other
margin or
contractor is giving their
profitability
homeowners right now.
number
If you're worried
with that
about
site.
it working with
And
stuff
then
you're already
you've got
using,
new
you know what? It
commercial.
integrates
Then you've
perfectly
got
into
maybe
Jobber,
repair,
Service Titan, House Call
etc.
Pro,
And
any
if
of the
you
stuff
could
that you guys are already using.
associate
It makes
the
it a seamless
cost
transition to add
with
this new
each
tool to your
revenue
arsenal.
chunk,
Go to
then you could get
hvacrnd.com,
like a
visit
rough
the vendor
cut
hub, set up your
profitability
LiveSwitch demo
of
today.
each,
You can
we'll
also
call it
click
like
the link down in the
division,
description below, or you
service
can find the
line,
link
or
to the
service
demo in my
family
bio.
that you're doing.
Thanks everybody for
And then
listening to
that
the
would
show.
really
Check out
help you
LiveSwitch.
figure
I
out,
promise
like,
you it is
wow,
an app for you.
if
It gives
I
you an
push
ability to do
item
something completely
3,
different for homeowners that
it's
no one
not
else
really
is
going
doing
to have
right
that
now.
big of an impact.
You guys
on
won't
my
be disappointed.
profitability.
Go schedule your
If I
demo
push
today.
item 1, it really does. Or how's this going to affect my cash flow? There are certain line items that kill your cash flow and certain ones that don't. And so, yeah, I think what you're saying is at a minimum, if you can't read the map, you're not going to get where you need to go. Then you need to be looking at the right kind of map. There's some.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, and also when you break it down into, let's say we're breaking down service and you've got these different categories of service or different categories of install, you also, the one other thing that you may be missing there is, just because this one item might be more profitable here, is the labor cost of that item more expensive than something else that might look like it's not making you as much money, but maybe making you more because you can do it in an hour versus 3.
Yeah. That is a great point. And I think the way to look at that maybe is are you able to associate costs effectively with like each job or each type of work? Because, for example, let's say you have 3 levels of technician, and you've got your senior, middle, and junior, and you're just acting like they're all the same price. But a certain kind of work almost always only uses senior techs that cost you a lot more money, but you're not accounting for that. That might be sort of where you're leading there. And so a good example might be if you're in a certain service line that, no offense, you're just not very good at. What'll often happen is you'll have customer complaints, rework, redo, broken stuff. And, when you go to fix something that's broken, usually you don't send out your junior tech. You start like applying the senior guys, or the owner or the foreman or whatever is like starting to spend a lot of time on these kind of messed up things. And if the messed up thing is always the same stuff, it's kind of an indicator that you're either not charging for it enough, you shouldn't be doing it, or something's broken. And so, a lot of times people get over their skis where they're really good at, let's call it Main Street, installing a 3-ton AC or, AC unit or whatever. But when it comes to some tricky, weird stuff, they want to get into it. But every time they take one of those projects, it's killing them. Probably a good example there would be you either need to figure out how to do it right or to kind of get out of doing it because it's killing you.
Well, and there's some things that when you started your business, you were really good at. So you want the company to be really good at, but it may be a very specialized thing. And in order to be good at it, if you can't get the specialized technicians and employees to be able to go after that niche in your market, it's not going to make you profitable. It's going to burn you down real quick because you can't do the things you want to do. So I think it also comes down to, not only do you have to be good at kind of understanding which way you're going financially, but you have to be very good at understanding the labor force that you actually have in your business, because the guys you have working for you are also going to help determine which sections of your business can and can't be more and less profitable.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be kind of an interplay, right?
Yep.
Do you have the right customers, the right thing to deliver, the right people to deliver it, where it's all, and the pricing, right? And it's all kind of got to work out for that little cluster of those 3 or 4 things for that to be a successful part of what you're doing. And generally, if 1 or 2 of those is mediocre or crappy, I mean, you're not going to make money if your pricing stinks, or if your techs can't deliver something, or you don't have a certain product or service that matches your market, or I don't know, whatever it is,
So let's start to break it down. Profit prescription is one of your key terms. It's a trademark term for you guys. What are your core steps to start actually fixing the business financially? When you look at a line that you say, well, this is profitable, but it's not at the same time, how are you breaking that down to determine if it's misapplication, if it's, your material cost is too high, your profit margin you're charging is too low? How do you start that process?
Yeah. Well, our process normally starts with what we call a profit X-ray. And in that session, it's a 90-minute session. Our goal is to kind of get a health check or snapshot of the company, multi-year view of revenue, profitability, owner compensation. But then we start looking at what we call profit leaks. And if your business, like a bucket, has a hole in it, it's hard to hold water, right? So we're looking for those profitability leaks. And if we identify several, then we think to ourselves, if we could patch those leaks, how much more water would that bucket hold? Which generally means how much more cash would be in your bank account available for you and your business to either grow or pay yourself. And so while that is like a by appointment service that we offer, and you could reach out to me, for example, and see if it's a fit, that profit leaks assessment is a free resource that we offer for people. So if you went to profitdoctor.com/leaks, LEKS, you could download it for yourself. And there's some little companion videos that would kind of walk you through it. But we go through basically the 10 biggest or most common areas where people are leaking profitability. And that almost gives you a little bit of a roadmap of like, okay, if these two are my biggest leaks, maybe I should try to patch them up over there,
Can you give me an example of a couple of them? We won't go through all 10, but
yeah. We don't have 6 or 7 hours to go through. No,
that's true.
So a big one would, sorry, brain fart there. A big one might be subcontractors, right? So let's say you deliver a lot of work through subcontractors. Let's say you've got 3 subcontractors and 1 or 2 of them are always kind of messing up their jobs. That's going to hurt you, right? I mean, not only is it going to hurt you from a cost perspective, but it's going to, burn out your ability to turn 1 customer into 3 customers because that customer is not going to be happy, right? So, in the trades, subcontractors can be huge, or material suppliers, right? But another one might be, as we were just talking about, services, right? If you are offering 5 things and maybe 2 of those are really bread and butter and you do great when that happens, 1 or 2 of those are like, kind of medium. And then 1 or 2 of those is always kind of a bit of a, cluster when you have those jobs. That's an example that you might be so much better off not offering that service anymore. And while it goes against the grain for so many people to say no to offering a certain service or servicing a certain kind of market, if you stink at delivering for, restaurants and retail, I mean, I got to tell you, if you've been trying to fix that for 5 years, you might be better off being not in that part of the business and focus on, Main Street. Let's pretend it's residential, right? I had a client, you'll like this, like a $2 million or so company out of New York State. And they did a lot of commercial security systems, right? So commercial security system is not incredibly dissimilar from, like, let's say, installing a new air conditioning system in a house, right? It's a project. You got to quote it, you estimate it, there's a budget of materials and labor and whatnot, and you can go over budget or under budget, and what else is going on the job site can interfere with things, right?
Yep.
And they realize that, hey, we are not successful with every kind of business. We don't want to do, I'm just going to make it up here, we don't want to do hospitals, we don't want to do retail, we want to work on this and this. And over the last 20 years, they realized that. And that was actually one of their biggest strength areas, in that they're very specific on the kind of customer they worked with, right? So some real big levers, if you will, or big leakage areas are what kind of customers you're working with, what kind of products and services you're doing or delivering or whatnot, who's on your team. Those are like 3 of the biggest ones. And then in the trades and construction world, obviously depends where you are in the stack, subcontractors and materials.
This episode of the HVAC R&D podcast is brought to you by Diversitech, the one-stop source for contractors who want to simplify every job. Whether you're stocking up on install supplies, service parts, thermostats, controls, or digging into the legendary tool line from Hillmore, Diversitech has you covered. They're not just a parts supplier. They help build solutions for HVAC pros, offering pads, condensate management gear, electrical parts, replacement components, premium tools that make installs, service calls, and maintenance faster, cleaner, and more professional. Partnering with Diversitech means fewer trips back to the supply house, more time on the job, and less chance of callbacks because you're using the right gear from the start. If you want to work smarter, stay stocked up, and show up for every job ready, Diversitech is a trade pro's best friend. Trade crew, let me ask you something. How many leads are you paying for right now that never actually turn into book jobs? That's where Chirp comes in. Chirp is built specifically for home service companies to help automate your follow-up through text, email, voicemail drops, and now AI-powered conversations. So your leads aren't sitting there going cold while you're out running calls. Because the reality is, speed to lead matters. If somebody fills out an online form and doesn't hear back quickly, they're already calling the next contractor. Chirp helps bridge the gap by instantly starting the conversation and keeping follow-up moving automatically. And what I really like is that it still feels human and not robotic. It integrates with platforms like Housecall Pro, Service Titan, Field Pulse, Jobber, and more, helping you stay in front of customers without creating more office chaos. If you want to convert more leads that you're already paying for, head over to Chirp, automate the follow-up, and close more deals. Make sure to go to the HVACRD.com resource hub and book your demo today and find out more about what is truly the most badass AI lead conversion system in the trades. In that same line of discussion, there are those times where if you cut off the bottom 20% of what you were doing and focus on the other 80% of what you were doing, you can drastically change the profit direction of your business. So,
yeah, 100%. What we see is those people who are like laser focused on kind of revenue only, but not thinking about profit. They're like, well, we know these jobs or these customers or this type of stuff is kind of crappy, but we're still getting something. But what they're getting something of is they're getting some revenue, but maybe what they're not appreciating is that their costs might be double. If you got to send out a senior tech to do rework on a project consistently in a certain type of industry, customer industry or certain type of project, that is almost always going to be you're losing money on that, right? Because you're not charging double just because you had to do the rework, and you're not charging double because the tech cost you twice as much, and that's what's required to kind of repair that disaster scenario. But you keep doing it because, well, it's adding something to our revenue. But if you're not paying attention to the associated costs that might be literally double for that kind of work, you're not appreciating that maybe every time we say yes to that, it's costing us $2,000.
Well, and I think you brought up a great point. Rework and other things like that and having to go back and fix issues. I think those can be part of what you consider your big hidden profit killers. Because
Absolutely.
A lot of times you're not really always paying attention to where, well, this guy logged 10 hours on this job, but it should have been done in 5. He logged another 5 because he was fixing what he didn't do right in the first 5.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, you kind of talk about the profit killers. We kind of already alluded to a couple of them. A big one is what we call growth mindset. And I'm a big believer in growth and more revenue and expansion and all that, but it has to be balanced with a full appreciation for the profit impact of that growth. What we see is when people clean up their profitability, what that usually means is they're getting rid of the stuff they're not very good at. People don't really value their work in that area, either a subcontractor, a team member, not real effective. And then that allows them more streamlined, right? Less drag, and to go further faster in terms of growth. So the first one is that growth mindset. Very similarly related is what we call the more mentality. If I just sell more, it's going to fix everything. And, for some companies that are already kind of streamlined, more does equal more. But what we see so often, and that's when I say profititis, like tendonitis, prostatitis, appendicitis, it's like profititis, it's like sick profit. That's when we see revenues going up or at a high level already, and profit is either flat or going down. So healthy revenue, sick profitability, we call that profititis. But that more mentality works well for those people who are already pretty well organized in terms of profitability. But for those people who have a lot of, drag in terms of profitability and drag on their business, more often doesn't actually result in more profit. Like more revenue often doesn't result in more profit for the business owner. And then a big one we're kind of alluding to is selling unprofitable stuff. It would seem obvious, right? Like, let's say we're in the, mice business, technology or whatever, right? If we sold mice, keyboards, and computers, you'd think that we would know what our costs are and we would never sell something at a loss. But boy, it ain't that easy when you're selling, let's say, a $35,000 HVAC install in a commercial setting. Like there's the cash dimension, like when you get paid and when money goes out. There's a whole team of different people doing different work. Some of it's tracked effectively to that job and some of it isn't. Different truck rolls, equipment. Do they actually pay you right at the end? Do they require 3 extra things from you that you don't get to bill them? It's not as always so obvious, right? It's not like just looking at a piece of paper. They paid me 70, it cost me 80. We shouldn't do it. And so selling unprofitable stuff, it sounds dumb when you say it, like who'd do that? But we see it all the time.
That leads me into my next question, which really is, how do pricing mistakes quietly destroy the margins without an owner realizing it? I think, there's one of the things I see the most is guys not knowing the difference between markup and actual pricing on margin, correct?
Yep.
But the other one is not really realizing how much they should charge for certain things. So, are there some benchmarks you see in margin levels that guys should try to be aiming for their business, that if they fall below this number, they really need to consider raising prices or reevaluating doing that type of business?
Yeah. I'm going to tackle that from a little bit of a different point of view. I don't want to give a blanket statement like you should be doing a X% markup.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be pretty darn contextual, by customer, by category, by region, all that sort of stuff. But here's the biggest one. Maybe one of the most powerful news you can use, if we're going to put this on a little clip and get it up on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever. Let's just pretend that the right number for pricing for your business is a 30% markup. Okay, let's pretend. Pick a number. You want to pick a different one?
Let's use margin, not markup. Hey, Mark, let's use margin. Margin, guys. Margin.
Margin. All right, we're going to do a quick aside. What's the difference between markup and margin? Let me just give you a real simple one. Let's say it costs you $1 to deliver something, like a cup of lemonade, right? If you charge $2, that is 100% markup. Your costs are 1, you times, 100% more is 2. So you're selling it for 2. You're selling it for 2. It costs you 1. That's 100% markup. But now if you look at your P&L and you say we sold 2 and it cost us 1, what is our margin? Your margin is 50%. So that's just like a crude example of how markup and margin can kind of trip you up, and it's worth knowing which one you mean. And most business owners at the end of the day are going to be more interested in margin than markup. So just make sure if you mark it up 30%, I think the math is your margin is going to look more like 20-something%. Okay, now I kind of forgot your question already, but what should be your markup, or how should you tackle pricing or whatever? So let's say that the margin that you're shooting for is 30%, right? Not counting all your overhead allocations or whatever, but all the costs, all the labor, all the materials, whatever. One of the things I want to share with people is so many times if people have a P&L and they're looking at their gross margin, which is generally for you guys likely going to be your sales or your revenue minus direct labor, like techs, like TECH, technicians, labor dollars, and then like hardcore materials, the cost of that new unit and the piping or whatever, right?
Yep.
That'll give you a gross margin calculation. What I'm trying to get across is probably 90+% of the time for the clients when I'm working with them who are below average profitability for their industry and size, they are not capturing all of the costs in that cost calculation that they're then trying to quote markup, right? So here's an example. Let's say you've got 100 technician hours. Did you include the payroll taxes of those technicians? Did you include, I think I said payroll taxes, if they have healthcare? What if there's other stuff? What if the customer pays with a credit card? Did you include the credit card processing charges up there? And we could go on. There's a bunch more. But let's say you thought you were charging $100 and you thought your labor was $25 and your materials were $25. and then you're going to mark that up, right? 50 to 100. My point there is, if your cost isn't 50, but it's 65, you probably, if you had the right markup or whatever number, you probably needed to mark up 65. And instead of then charging 100, you'd probably be at whatever that is, like 119 or something, right?
100%. I've watched some things in my own family business where when we went in and we built labor for a job, we only built in what it actually costs for labor, not all those other things that go along with it.
Yeah.
That pull that extra money out of your profit dollars.
So let me share an example. Another example. Another client out of New York. Congratulations, many of you are not working in New York and California, where the labor costs are really out of sight. And if you think a guy's making, let's say, $25 an hour, it is not costing you as the employer $25 an hour of actual guy on the job site doing something useful. In many cases, let's say you came up with that $25 an hour because the person is working, let's say 2,000 hours in the year, full time minus 2 weeks of vacation, and you're paying him 50,000 a year. Well, chances are he's not doing 2,000 hours of billable work, right? There's all the time in the truck. There's the time in training. There's the time in the office. There's vacation and holiday and sick time and PTO and all that. And so you might have thought it's costing you 25 an hour, but by the time you did payroll taxes and unemployment insurance and L&I and all that, and the fact that that guy's not doing 2,000 hours of productive work, it might look something more like 1,300 hours a year. You're like 1,300 hours a year, and it's not 50, maybe it's 65. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, instead of 25 an hour, it's probably 43 an hour. And then you're like, I've been marking up this number of 25 in my mind. I should have been marking up off 43. And that's kind of where I'm going to. If your pricing is not, if you have some kind of markup or some sense of like, we're going to take our cost and use that as a basis for pricing, you got to really include all the costs. Otherwise, otherwise that's why you're not making any money.
Well, and that starts to kind of answer another question I was going to ask, which is, what role do people, the hiring, pay structure, and leadership play in profit problems? And beyond just the really understanding what your billable hours are for technicians, there's also the other cost of, you've got 6 people in the office that are doing scheduling. They're not, their hours aren't billed on the job at all. Yeah, because they're not part of a line item. You've got managers that are, maybe you've got one manager per 12 technicians or one manager per 30, depending on what the department is. That's another cost suck that you've got going on there that's pulling out a profit. So is there an additional maybe rule of thumb, or how do you help guys understand how to develop what they need to build into their pricing to also cover the people that aren't considered billable hour people, but are, essential to actually letting the business run and work?
Yep. I think that really just gets back to, does the owner and their leadership team have kind of the confidence and capability to look at the numbers effectively? Are they getting numbers that are, quote, easy to look at? We have a whole module in our consulting programs called Easy Insights Financials, EZ Insights. And the idea of that is, how can you make what you're looking at easy to understand and like the insights sort of fall off the page rather than needing like a Wharton MBA with a slide rule to kind of figure something out? And then how can you make sure that you as the owner and your top 2 or 3 folks know what to look for, right? It's kind of a virtuous cycle there. But a couple of key things: if you're not fully appreciating your costs, it's going to be hard to price effectively, right? I think a lot of business owners, they kind of choke on the idea, like, I can't mark this up 100%. And so it's like they can't raise the price more than a percentage, if you will, in their mind, because they think that's not fair. But maybe for them, the thing that would unlock them is to appreciate you just haven't captured all the costs, right? Yeah. And so, the costs come in several flavors. One is the actual stuff that varies job by job, which is what I was talking about a few minutes ago. And then the stuff that you were talking about, how many people in scheduling or how many, managers or whatever do you have, that might be more like overhead or fixed cost. You got to appreciate that, right? If it takes you, I don't know, let's just make it up. It takes you $1 million in corporate overhead to deliver $5 million, like to have enough managers and schedulers and trucks and I don't know, stuff to deliver $5 million worth of work. That means that basically for every dollar of work you deliver, 20 cents is not going to like technicians and materials and stuff. It's going to managers and scheduling software and I don't know, stuff like that. And so I think it's very, very valuable to at least know what your costs are, because if you don't know what they are and where they're kind of slotting into, how can you price effectively, right? It's almost like I'm charging $3 for this mouse, but I didn't take into account the fact that I'm, paying a bunch on shipping, right?
Yeah.
To get it to me and then back out to the customer. I'm like, I just see my distributor sells me this mouse for $1. I sell it to you for $3. I think I'm making a boatload. But like, let's say, God forbid, I'm taking orders from this mouse for this mouse one at a time over the phone. I mean, that guy that takes the order probably costs me $15 a call to take that order. So like I'm losing money every time I sell a mouse, right? And that's an example of, are you keeping track properly of where your costs go? So not to be like incredibly boring and accounting oriented, what's exciting is when we help somebody find another 5 or 10 percentage points of profitability. So like last year, you're 5 million in revenue, but you're only keeping, let's just say, 250K of net profit. That's like a 5% net profit. Routinely, we help people add another 5 percentage points of net profit. So on $5 million, that's literally another $250,000 a year of net profit. But you could, as an owner, pay yourself or pay off your old EIDL loan or pay your shareholders or whatever, or invest in, better employees or scheduling software or a vacation or whatever it is. So very, very valuable and very exciting to deliberately tackle profitability. And that's what we help our clients do. I totally invite you guys to get that leakage detector tool, profitdoctor.com/leaks. Because there's really some straightforward things that you can do. And on our first take that got scrapped by the technology gods, I was like, one of the reasons I love working with high performing like construction and trades owners is a lot of times the reason maybe their profit is not so great is because they just didn't know something about the business.
Yeah.
And so when you give them that little nugget, they're like, holy crap, I didn't know that. But now that I do, I'm sure as hell going to pull that lever. And so when you guys, not you guys, when those people who didn't understand something get the memo like, I didn't load all my cost into the calculation that I was then going to mark up. I probably should put a chunk for overhead, a chunk for, technician payroll, taxes, etc. Then like, boom, all of a sudden they can pull that lever and like, we'll just say we're still marking up 35%, but now we didn't forget about 20% of our costs. And now all of a sudden we can make money,
Trade crew, let's be real for a second. Most callbacks aren't because the system doesn't heat or cool. They're because something small got overlooked. And condensate issues, that's one of the biggest ones. That's why I like the Assurity system from Diversitech. It's a full approach. Pans, switches, pumps, all designed to work together and create redundancy so you're not relying on just one line of defense. Because when water gets loose in a house, that gets expensive. Fast. Now here's the kicker. When you install it the right way, you can back it with the Assurity Promise. That's up to $2,500 in water damage protection. That's a big deal for your customers and for you and your business. Just go online to AssurityHVACR.com. It's easy to register, tied to your install, and now you've got another way to stand behind your work. That's how you separate yourself. Ask your local distributor about Assurity from Diversitech today. All right, trade crew. Commercial HVAC isn't getting any simpler. Have you ever been standing in front of a rooftop unit thinking, I know I've seen this problem before, I just can't remember where? That's where FieldMind comes in. FieldMind is an AI-powered service assistant built specifically for commercial HVAC technicians. Instead of searching random forums or hoping Google gives you the right answer, FieldMind gives you access to a curated knowledge library built exclusively for our industry. So you're learning from real HVAC experience, not internet guesses. And here's what really sets it apart. Every service call makes the platform smarter. As technicians solve problems and contribute what they learn in the field, that knowledge is added back into the system, helping the next technician diagnose problems faster and more efficiently. If you're ready to put another experienced technician in your pocket, download FieldMind from the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and use the HVAC R&D promo code HVACRND30 to unlock your free 30-day trial. FieldMind. Every service call makes the next technician better. That transitions me kind of perfectly into the last parts of that I really wanted to ask and discuss on the show. And with you saying, one of your favorite things about dealing with tradespeople is when you can help someone find 5 to 10% that they just didn't realize. And it's that nugget of information that changes a lot of it. You talk a lot about reclaiming the dream.
Yeah.
So what does that actually look like to a business owner, and what's your philosophy behind that, and how can it be, I guess, what's the right way to phrase it? But what does it mean to a contractor or a business owner to understand what reclaiming the dream actually is?
Well, like you said, most, a very large percentage, I won't say, I guess that is most, most people who own, let's say, $1 to $50 million sized construction or trades business, they used to swing a hammer or turn a wrench or something along those lines. And they were one of the best techs or one of the best salespeople in that old company where they kind of came up through. Or maybe in your case, their dad had that business and they were pretty good kind of following along. But for the most part, they didn't start their own thing because they're masochists and want to get punched in the face every day by stressing about making payroll and not being able to pay suppliers and being beaten up for salary increases that they can't afford because their company is hemorrhaging cash. That is not the dream that got them in this thing. As I like to say, that is not the dream that convinced the most effective tech or best sales guy at that old company to start their own thing. It was freedom, the opportunity to have financial success for themselves and their family, being able to kind of chart your own course a little bit and have control over your destiny. It's stuff like that. But when you are on the lower third of profitability in your industry at your size, that is not the reality probably that you are living day to day. You are living the heart attacks and stress and holy crap, I can't afford payroll. And I realize I borrowed $500,000 of EIDL loans back in 2021 or whatever. And holy shit, how am I going to get out of this hole? Right. So I have a client, a couple of $1 million, been at it 20 years. They've been doing great work for their clients. They've been treating their staff real good. And you know who's getting the short end of the stick? The owner, right? So 20 years they've been doing this. They are basically paying their salary, and that business is sitting on $500,000 of debt. Well, you are not going to retire on a business that makes very little or no profitability and has a bunch of debt. That is not something you're going to sell for $5 million and go retire off Key Largo. It doesn't work like that. And so we help that person switch gears. So their teams that were installing stuff switched from we do a great job for the customer to we do a great job for the customer, profitably. And for them, what profitable meant was, when we bid a job, let's say it's 40 grand, we're expecting to work this many hours and spend this many dollars on materials, something like that, right? So now the people doing the delivery are keeping an eye on, here's our labor budget, here's our materials budget. And if we said we're going to do it for 40, that number of actual cost probably needs to roll in at 30 or less for those guys to make any money, right? And sometimes when you train your folks in the field, you're not going to say, okay, you need to hit a labor budget of $45,000. It's more like you need to hit a labor budget of, we'll make it up, 87 tech hours, or 80 junior tech hours and 20 senior tech hours, or something like that. But anyway, so we help those guys switch from basically low single digit profitability to 20% net profit. That's after everything. That's basically the difference between getting kicked in the whatever every day when you come to work, and coming home, honey, rocked it again, socking away cash to build up our family's financial future. And that is what lights me up. If you haven't, it's not all the coffee. It's like helping people helping people have been working their butts off for a million years on these businesses and getting kicked in the like switch gears to, honey, we put away another $200,000 this year for our family's financial future.
Really what that's even leading to is when you feel successful is when you helped this business owner go from being an operator to being a CEO of their business, and actually being able to understand the business they're running as opposed to the job they created for everybody that works for them.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big shift. Like, do you have a job for yourself? Or, I'm sure you've heard, working on your business instead of in your business.
Yeah, grab those books behind you. I know they're back there.
Yeah, right.
I talk about these books all the time, people. They are real.
Big fan. There's actually one of these versions that's for the HVAC contractor. It's probably my favorite in the series, and I'd highly recommend it. It's, I don't know, $20 on Amazon or whatever.
Well, and speaking of that, I'll jump in real quick. One thing that is being added into the resource hub, and it should be in the resource hub by the time this show airs, is I'm putting in a list of books like E-Myth, Rhinoceros Success. I'll plug that just because I love the title, but it's a fantastic book. Books like that I think could be really core for a lot of us out there that are working to educate ourselves to be a better potential CEO as opposed to operator in our business. So there's going to be an Amazon book list that's built into the HVACRD.com resource hub. So please go and check that out.
Nice. Well, maybe as long as we're plugging our stuff,
go for it.
Plug in that profit leakage detector, or invite folks to come to our website and, do the leakage detector. Maybe give me a call. It is a lot of fun helping somebody kind of turn the ship around, particularly those people who've been doing such great work for their customers, such great work for their employees.
Well, and we'll put, I'll get some graphics and some information from you and your team as well. And we'll put a Profit Doctor link into the resource hub for you guys also. So if you start looking for that, the easiest way to find it, just go to hvacrnd.com, the resource hub, and all that will be in there for you guys. So a couple last questions. I think obviously this one you pretty much answered. I was going to say, if someone listening feels stuck right now, what's the first move they should make? I think you literally just hit the nail on the head for what they need to do for that. You need to go and check out Profit Doctor, download his tool, and start figuring some of these things out free, and then get on the phone with him and really start to break things down. But, Ben, you've got the mic here at the end. What's one truth about profit that every business owner has to hear, has to understand, whether they've listened to the last 50 minutes of our conversation or not? What's the one thing they've got to leave this show knowing and understanding?
You need to dedicate specific time to working on profitability. And internal operations, firefighting, getting more customers is usually not the direct path to improving profitability the fastest. I would invite you to schedule 1 to 3 hours every week in a block to tackle profitability. And no surprise, I would invite you for your first thing to get that profit leaks assessment and go through it.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for all of your knowledge and information in the conversation today. And Trade Crew, I hope you guys have a great weekend. We hope you got some value from this show. So everybody go out there, take a look at your books, get some more profit, have some more fun, and develop your business more so that you can reclaim your dream and enjoy what you do each and every day. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Peace.
Thank you, Rhino.
And that's another one in the books, trade crew. If you enjoyed today's conversation and found value in it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. Leave a 5-star rating, drop a review, and let me know your biggest takeaway in the comments. Every like, comment, review, and share helps me reach more of the incredible people who make this industry great. Don't forget to subscribe to the HVAC R&D and Ramblin' Rhino newsletter on Substack so that you never miss a new podcast episode or article drop. And while you're there, be sure to check out the HVAC R&D Resource Hub for trusted tools, products, and resources for both your business and your life outside of the trades. If you've got a story worth telling, a lesson worth sharing, or you're helping move the skilled trades forward, I'd love to have you on the show. Head over to hvacrnd.com, fill out the guest questionnaire, or connect with me through any of the social media channels. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, keep serving, and remember, when the trade crew grows, the entire industry gets stronger. Ramblin' Rhino out. Peace, y'all.